Hello. What are you doing here? Anything the matter?
I've come to say goodbye. We're going away.
What on earth are you talking about?
It's true, we're going now, and I was afraid I wouldn't see you again.
If you love listening to this show, please consider giving a rating and a review on Amazon Alexa or wherever you listen. We want to continue bringing you this amazing content, and part of our ability to do that means that we need a big audience. Now, it may not seem like much, but rating and reviewing the show will help more people find us, just like how you found this show. Simply on any podcast platform, search for our show, scroll down to the bottom, and push 5 stars. It's that easy. Thanks for supporting the show. Today, I'm joined by Greg Morris, who is the SVP and President of ADM's Agricultural Services and Oilseeds Business Unit. Thanks for joining today.
Hey, thanks for having me, Scott.
So, Greg, tell us a little bit about your role, and then, of course, the business unit within ADM.
Sure, happy to do so. When I talk about ADM, I think I have to start with talking about the purpose. And our purpose is to unlock the power of nature to enrich the quality of life. And really what we're doing is transforming crops into a real broad portfolio of products that are used in food, feed, and various industrial applications, and even have some consumer products as well. It's a big company. So we are part of the Fortune 100. Revenues of about $64 billion and about $2 billion in earnings. And my business unit is one of 3 business units in the company. And as you said, it's called Ag Services and Oilseeds. I've been with the company 26 years. I've worked in all 3 business units. My group today happens to be the largest business unit. And we really have responsibility for handling about 10% of the world's agricultural commodities, which is it's a lot of stuff that we handle. We move it through our entire global network. We essentially originate crops in areas like North America, South America, and Europe. We move these crops to about 160 different countries around the world. And so as part of our group also, we process about 40 million tons of oil seeds. And oil seeds are essentially anything that you can squeeze vegetable oil out of. So things like soybeans, canola, rapeseed, sunflower seeds, cottonseed, flax, peanuts. We turn these oil seeds into protein meals that are used in large part in animal feed, but also vegetable oils that are used in food, feed, and a variety of industrial applications. So we take our role in the world very seriously as we help to feed the growing population.
When you describe the vastness in terms of both the size and the reach and the distribution of ADM, and the kind of market share and impact that you have, one small change, whether it's a process change or a product change, really has huge potential implications, positive, negative. So I wonder, over the century or so that the organization's been around, can you highlight just a handful of kind of marquee sets of inventions or process improvements that have really kind of helped refine and optimize this massive machinery?
Yeah, well, we have an interesting perspective, and I think it's, when you work for a global company the size of ADM, you end up with a local perspective, where you're engaging with farmers in rural communities, but you also end up with a very global perspective as you think about, what's happening in the world and the complexities at times as you execute business around the world. And, I guess if I think about, our business model, we date back to 1902, and our business model at a high enough level is kind of the same. We've always taken crops and turned them into other products that have higher value. But I'd say what's changed is there's really been a transformation in the last, really in the last decade or so in terms of, the requirement to have a digital presence with your producers and allowing them to engage with your company, not just over the telephone like you traditionally have. Customers have higher expectations in terms of digital engagements. Even thinking about, and I'm sure we'll talk a bit about, sustainability and what's happening in agriculture there. But as you introduce more complexity to the supply chain, again, technology has to be embraced so that you don't impose unnecessary costs on those global commodity flows. So I would say technology is probably, one of the biggest changes in terms of just how we execute the day-to-day business, and how we engage with, again, both the producers and our customers.
And I think there's a lot there because when you think about the sources and the kinds of unique product SKUs, I mean, it's a massive portfolio, and then of course you're seeing that through the different points within the manufacturing and the storage distribution to the end last mile, and of course all the different stakeholders that are involved, including the end customers. That's a lot to handle, and certainly, in the case of COVID, we've seen a lot of issues around supply chain, whether it's things being improperly forecasted and not having enough inventory, or in some cases, you've had to lose certain crop because there wasn't a need or the commodity prices can support it, for example. So there's a ton of issues, and I wonder, if you go a little bit granular in terms of some of the kind of metadata that's uniquely really valuable for the different stakeholders and users, and being able to trace what kind of data is critical for the success of the different parties.
Well, I think, if you just reflect on, in the last year, not only did our industry and our company have to deal with, the pandemic, we went through the fall and we had the biggest export program in the history of the United States out of the United States. And New Orleans is a critical export corridor for our country. And we had 6 or 7 named storms that were targeted directly at New Orleans. And so if you can imagine the time and attention that everybody spent, making sure that we had, redundancy plans in place, not only to protect our workforce in the middle of a pandemic, but also understanding how we're going to navigate, these weather events that were, historic by any measure. So we business continuity planning and making sure that we have, solid thoughts while the waters are calm about how we're going to handle certain situations. That's become a critical opportunity for us over the years. And I think when you operate in our industry, you end up building a muscle over time that's really day-to-day innovation, really day-to-day, creativity in how you approach what Mother Nature throws at you next. And I think, there's lots of examples in this last year where the team stepped up and was able to manage. I think, today there's lots of publicly available data, but I still think when you have boots on the ground and you have your own proprietary information as it relates to the way that farmers are behaving or the way that customers are behaving, you see the crop develops real time around the world and the impacts of weather issues that inevitably are going to impact either the success or failure of crops. That fundamental information, if you feed it through the right risk management mechanism and match that up with the right individuals that can piece together the story that's developing in front of you, that becomes a pretty powerful combination in terms of managing the risk associated with, significant volatility in commodity markets, unusual weather patterns that have created additional volatility, physical disruptions that can happen as a result of all of that. And so I think it's a combination of kind of the traditional fundamental knowledge that you develop from having that broad base and boots on the ground and knowledge of producers and customers, leveraging that with the technology to be able to pull together the proper story so that you can manage that supply chain risk properly.
I think you bring up a really great example, and certainly, I think there's many sectors. I mean, almost all sectors are affected by weather, and this is part of the reason why years ago IBM, purchased some of the digital and physical assets from the climate. The Weather Channel, for example. The weather has, more material impact to earnings and quarterly, reports and market cap fluctuations than anything else. And certainly in the area of agriculture, it's really all about the weather. Right? It's how much sunshine, how much rain, all those things, and of course the impact to also supply chain and logistics, as we've seen. So huge. But I think one of those things that's kind of underlying is this notion of, kind of historical versus kind of the real time, versus more kind of predictive. So having sensors on the ground, having information on the ground is one thing. But if you could talk a little bit about your thoughts around more predictive modeling, because we're starting to see, let's say, maybe more frequent, but certainly more intense, whether it's, I think they call it multimodal in terms of not just the hurricane, but the flooding that comes afterwards is an example that impacts corridors, transportation corridors and whatnot. If you could talk about that, because I think there was a project called Project Brain that's looking at satellite imaging, for example, in terms of traceability, but I wonder how you guys are thinking through kind of forward predictive aspects.
Yeah.
You may also like our quarterly Ask Perkins event that brings some of the most notable experts and category leading startups in their area of sustainability and human survival on Earth and in space. To register, visit astroperkins.com/events.
I'd say maybe if I take that in a couple different buckets, the weather patterns are certainly important as it relates to crop production, and that's part of just commodity trading and understanding how crops develop. There's nothing we can do to control the weather, so we try to understand the impact that's going to have, and then make sure that we can position ourselves appropriately to continue to deliver products to our customers. But you did mention the satellite imagery that we use in Brazil, and we use that in Brazil specifically because there is greater concern today about some of the sensitive lands in Brazil and the impact that agriculture is having on some of those environmentally sensitive lands. So we use technology in Brazil specifically to make sure that we understand, who we're buying from, what the history of that land has looked like. So essentially, we match up satellite imagery with publicly available land data, and then we match that up with our purchasing records to make sure that we can do our part to make sure that we're buying grain or buying oil seeds from farmers that are pursuing the right environmental practices in their farming practices. We don't want to be associated with, deforestation in the Amazon, for example. So we're very sensitive that we've got a critical role to play, not only in feeding the world, but also in making sure that in the origins where we do business, that we're doing the right thing for our producers and for our customers and for the environment. And technology in Brazil has been critically important for us to use that eye in the sky, if you will, but then match it up with the right technology to piece together other publicly available data and then tie it into our own systems so that we have kind of the full picture of the farmers that we're doing business with.
So I want to talk a little bit about kind of these external pressures, and some of it's maybe coming from stakeholders, but even including, like the World Bank, IFC, and other organizations that's really kind of, in some ways, at this point, if you're not part of it, the industry is going to start to, mislabel you around ESGs. So there's a tremendous amount of growing pressures, and some of those pressures, I think, potentially your industry could be facing as just general kind of, rethinking this whole corporate farming, right? What does it mean, and how those kind of single plant, single species, large scale, farming, what's the kind of impact to our, not just the ecosystem, but also the oxygen level and ability to, decarbonize and sequester at the ground level, to new movements around food innovation that is trying to take away more of the, the cattle farms and more into, lab cell-based meats and aqua products, for instance. Again, cattle, it certainly isn't going to go anytime soon, but there's certainly a lot more pressure, and of course, a lot of pressure around, the use of cleaner energy as well. So that there's a lot of kind of external things that's coming at you guys, I wonder, and you guys are also, there's a number of interesting initiatives as well that we'll talk about, but how are you guys internalizing these various things that you feel that, perhaps maybe it's a little bit, does it feel like they're kind of contradictory in the sense of your fiscal, financial, KPIs versus the kind of new mandates and the pressure that's coming from outside?
it's a balancing act because you've got a lot to process there, but climate change for sure, and the carbon intensity of the world is certainly top of mind. And if you maybe think about the significant commitments that countries have made recently in terms of greenhouse gas reductions by 2030, you think about even in the United States where public policy is moving in a direction that's very supportive to a sustainable future. And if you recognize that agriculture has been part of the problem, we have to step up and be part of the solution. And we have our own initiatives within our company to address our own sustainability and our own carbon footprint and waste and water usage. But I think our opportunity, operating in the space we operate in and the size of the company we are, our opportunity is much broader than our own specific footprint. When we can leverage our role in the world to help influence farming practices, whether that's regenerative agriculture, whether it's in minimizing, inputs on the farm, whether it's, helping to create a revenue stream so the producer gains in that process of evolving his farming practices to protect the soil of the future, that's a huge opportunity for us. While at the same time, we have that customer pull. So a lot of the CPG companies, a lot of the petroleum companies built on the back of public policy are now all asking for more sustainable products. And so when we can bridge that gap between farming practices of the future and more sustainable practices with customer and consumer demand of the future, we can actually create that demand pull through the supply chain. And I think the magic ends up being, if you can do that in such a manner to create benefit for the farmer, so additional revenue streams for him for pursuing more environmentally friendly practices, we create an opportunity to differentiate with the farmer and with our customers. So there's value there. And you create an opportunity for more environmentally friendly products for your customer base so that they can go to market to the consumers with a new value proposition. Now you've been able to address, the environmental concern with a business model that's sustainable, where you have the farmers winning, ADM wins, the customer wins, and the environment wins. And to me, I think that's the opportunity that we have operating in that large end-to-end supply chain in agriculture. And then I think you find the right balance so that it doesn't have to be, are you trying to please, the environmental stakeholders? Are you trying to please your shareholders? I think there's actually a real opportunity for us to please them both.
Great. Thank you for that response. I think one of the challenges with any really large organization like yours is that even if yourself and your peers at the the CXO level really understand and have clarity around how to actually walk this fine balance, is being able to actually really allow for that transformation to take place organizationally, especially in the kind of the mid tier and the lower tier of the organization. So I wonder, as we talk about, projects or initiatives such as around sustainability, B100 biodiesel for trucks, to CSS system around carbon capture and storage, to human nutrition, animal nutrition innovations, and all these things, how are you going about kind of, supporting this innovation and new thought and transformation, including data like we talked about, and making sure that the different tiers within the entity actually really buys into it and feels like they want to be part of the solution?
Don't forget to visit AstraPerkins.com to register for our next quarterly events. Past and current speakers include Julianne Hough, actress, dancer, and winner of Dancing with the Stars; Damian Vaughn, former NFL player; Neil Gregory, Chief Thought Leadership Officer at the IFC World Bank; and many more. To register, visit AstraPerkins.com and click on Events.
So we've evolved that over the years. It used to be sustainability was its own department, and you almost looked at sustainability as more of kind of a compliance obligation. They were kind of your license to operate group, and making sure that you were doing all the things that you needed to do as a good corporate citizen. But what we've done over the years is really try to weave sustainability into the natural strategic thought process of the business. And I would say today, whether you're in, ag services and oilseeds, whether you're in the business unit called Carb Solutions, or whether you're in our nutrition business unit, sustainability is woven into the strategy and the 5-year plans of every business unit. It's not a corporate function, it's a business function, it's a business opportunity. And we try to leverage, subject matter expertise housed within the sustainability group, but we also make sure that we have commercial minds embedded in that group so that they can be the bridge to make sure that the businesses have the right resources and perspective to really try to drive the sustainability component of the strategy forward. And it really helps when there is that customer demand pull. It becomes more obvious to the teams in the commercial ranks to understand, what the real value proposition is, because we wake up every day trying to satisfy our producers and trying to satisfy our customers. And when those opportunities to satisfy each of those ends up being a sustainability opportunity, it's just a natural to execute on.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And thank you for explaining that. Out of the many different types of initiatives and projects, and of course, new product lines as well, is there anyone in particular that you're especially excited about, and what is it?
There's a lot. I'd say, today we're a significant supplier of vegetable oil to the renewable green diesel space. That's been a game changer in North America. Europe's a significant producer of renewable green diesel as well. That's going to be one of the fuels of the future that's going to help to replace petroleum diesel. California has been a leader in that. Washington, Oregon, lots of other states are following suit. But there's a lot more to unpack there. If you think about, all the different boxes that get consumed, and for sure, if COVID did anything, it created additional demand for all the Amazon boxes that get delivered to our houses. We have cornstarch that you can actually add to the recycling process of cardboard boxes that allows you to increase the recyclability of those boxes by like 5 to 7 times. We have, lots of projects we're working on where you can take vegetable oil and replace petroleum oil in tires. We've got, projects like in our nutrition group where we're producing rawhides out of pea protein. We've got, in our animal nutrition group, we're working on feed products that allow for lower methane gas emissions or methane emissions from a cow. Trying to think about how do you actually control the feed that's going in? How do you control the activities that happen while it's being digested in the animal to ultimately have an impact on what the waste of that animal? Another interesting one is we announced about a few months ago, the largest insect farm in the world is going to be located in Decatur, Illinois. It's not our insect farm, but it's a company that we partnered with called Innova Feed. Well, those insects are going to actually eat some of the feed products that we produce in our corn plant in Decatur. So this company is going to locate this massive insect farm in Decatur, Illinois to do that. We launched a joint venture with Marfrig, which is the largest hamburger patty producer in the world. We're producing plant-based proteins with Marfrig, leveraging our capabilities in the plant-based meat arena, which is, dates back 20, 30 years, along with their go-to-market strategy with their customer base. And you mentioned carbon capture and sequestration. That's found its way into the news a lot lately. We've been doing it for the last 5 years in Decatur. We've actually got 2 wells down there, and that's been a great success for us. So the list goes on and on. There's lots of different things that we've done that are kind of beyond the traditional grain handling and processing role that we've traditionally been viewed as.
Well, I think one of the things that this podcast is certainly trying to shift towards is recognizing that some of these changes are really difficult, but we celebrate the small changes and the initiatives, and certainly these are by no means small. I think, again, because of the nature and the scale of the organization, any impact that you guys do positively has a huge, widespread multiplying effect. So with that, I have been joined by Greg Morris, who is the SVP and President of ADM's Agricultural Services and Oilseeds Business Unit. Thank you for joining today.
Hey, thank you, Scott. Thanks for having me.
If you've enjoyed this episode, take a moment to rate our show on any podcast platform that you listen to. Scroll down to the bottom and push 5 stars. It's that easy. And as always, thanks for listening.